When Gideon Hale's past walks back into his life in the form of Elena, the woman who once shattered his heart and betrayed his trust, he is dragged into a brutal game of survival against Draven, the ruthless warlord who destroyed everything he ever loved. But as bullets fly and old wounds bleed anew, Gideon faces an agonizing choice: trust the woman who betrayed him or kill her before she does it again. One wrong move, and the line between love and vengeance will vanish forever. The rain tapped against the window pane of Gideon Hale's apartment, a steady rhythm that matched the restless pulse in his chest. Nights in the city always carried a certain heaviness, but tonight it felt different, like the air itself was thick with secrets waiting to be revealed. Gideon sat alone at his desk, a half-finished glass of bourbon beside a stack of papers he hadn't bothered to touch. His career as a financial investigator had given him more late nights than he could count, yet this was not one of them. The files were nothing but a cover, a distraction from the gnawing emptiness that had grown inside him since Elena, his fiancée, had walked out of his life 6 months ago without explanation. Her sudden disappearance was the kind that left more questions than answers. No arguments, no warning, no closure. Just silence. Gideon told himself he had learned to live with it, but in truth, the wound remained raw. Every unanswered phone call, every letter returned unopened, replayed in his mind like a haunting melody he couldn't escape. The sound of his phone vibrating jolted him from his thoughts. Unknown number. He hesitated, staring at the screen. Instinct told him to ignore it, but something deeper, an intuition he had always trusted, urged him to answer. "Gideon Hale," he said, his voice low, guarded. A pause, then a breath on the other end. And then a voice he hadn't heard in half a year. Soft, trembling, unmistakable. "Gideon, it's me. Elena." His blood turned to ice. For a moment, he couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The woman who had vanished without a trace was suddenly back, her voice slicing through the quiet like a blade. "Elena? Where are you?" he demanded, rising from his chair as if movement would anchor the moment in reality. Another pause, then her whisper, "I can't explain now. They're watching me. But I need you. Please meet me tomorrow. Noon, at the old clock tower." The line went dead before he could respond. Gideon stood frozen, the weight of her words pressing down on him. "They're watching me." His mind raced with questions. Who were they? Why had she disappeared? And why come back now, dragging him into a web of danger he didn't yet understand? He poured the rest of his bourbon in one swift motion, the burn in his throat grounding him. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. Elena's return was the spark that had just ignited something much darker. And Gideon knew, with absolute certainty, that tomorrow would change everything. Sleep never came. Gideon spent the night pacing his apartment, every creak of the wooden floor echoing like a reminder of what waited at noon. Elena's voice replayed in his head, fragile yet urgent, threaded with fear. It wasn't the voice of someone who had left because she stopped loving him. It was the voice of someone trapped in something far bigger than both of them. By morning, the city looked washed in silver from the overnight rain. Gideon showered, shaved, and dressed in dark clothes. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. Old habits from his investigative work surfaced. The paranoia, the awareness of being followed, the instinct to plan exits before he even entered a room. He checked the small pistol in his drawer, his hand hovering. He hadn't carried a weapon since his father's death, vowing never to walk the same dangerous path the old man had chosen. But this wasn't a night of old promises. This was Elena, and something inside told him she was in real danger. With a clenched jaw, he slid the pistol into his shoulder holster. The clock tower loomed at the edge of the city, a relic from another century. Once a proud symbol, it now stood abandoned, its bricks weathered and its face frozen at a time long forgotten. Gideon parked 2 blocks away, walking the rest on foot. Every step tightened the knot in his stomach. He arrived early, scanning the square with sharp eyes. A couple of street vendors packed up their morning stalls, but otherwise, the place was empty. Gideon leaned against the cold stone wall, his breath visible in the cool air, and waited. Minutes dragged by like hours. Noon struck, the old bell groaning through the silence. But Elena wasn't there. Gideon's chest tightened. Had she been caught? Was this some elaborate trap? Then movement. Across the square, a woman emerged from the shadows of the tower. Her dark coat clung to her frame, her hair loose around her shoulders, and though time and fear had left their marks, Gideon would have known her anywhere. Elena, he breathed, stepping forward. She rushed to him, her eyes darting nervously around the square. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, though her trembling hands clutched his arm as if she couldn't let go. "You called me. Tell me what's going on." Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice was urgent. "They're watching everything. My phone, my apartment, even the streets. I only had one chance to reach you. Gideon, if you don't listen, we'll both be." A sudden crack echoed through the air. A gunshot. Instinct took over. Gideon pulled Elena down behind the stone steps of the tower, shielding her with his body as shards of brick sprayed into the air where they had just been standing. His pulse thundered in his ears. "Elena, who the hell is after you?" Her lips trembled, and her answer was barely audible through the chaos. "The people I trusted the most." The sharp scent of gunpowder lingered in the air, mixing with the cold stone dust that fell from the shattered wall. Gideon's grip tightened around Elena's wrist as another shot rang out, the bullet sparking against the iron railing inches from his head. Whoever was firing wasn't trying to scare them. This was an execution. "Stay down," he barked, pulling the pistol from his holster. Elena's breath came in ragged bursts, her eyes wide with terror. "They found me. I told you they would." Gideon's mind raced. He leaned just enough to catch a glimpse of movement on a rooftop across the square. A glint of steel. A silencer. Professional. "Damn it," he muttered, calculating the distance. With one quick move, he fired 2 shots in return. Not to hit, but to force the shooter to duck. The silence that followed was tense, like the city itself was holding its breath. "On your feet, now," Gideon ordered, pulling Elena up. They sprinted along the side of the tower, their footsteps echoing in the empty square. He kept her shielded with his body, adrenaline surging through every nerve. A black sedan screeched around the corner, tires screaming against wet pavement. 2 men in dark coats jumped out, guns raised. Elena froze. "It's them." Before she could finish, Gideon shoved her behind a column and returned fire, forcing the men to duck behind their car. Bullets tore into the stone, showering them with fragments. "Run, Elena," he shouted. She hesitated, torn between fear and her need to stay by his side, but the ferocity in his eyes pushed her into motion. She dashed toward the alley behind the tower, her coat whipping behind her like a shadow. Gideon followed, covering their retreat with calculated shots. His heart hammered, not from the firefight. He had seen worse in his years investigating corruption and organized crime, but from the raw terror of losing Elena again, just as she had returned. They burst into the narrow alley, the walls pressing close on either side. Gideon pulled Elena into a recessed doorway, his chest heaving as he scanned the street. For now it was empty. Elena clung to his arm, her voice breaking. "You shouldn't have come. Now they'll kill you too." Gideon cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "Then tell me who they are, Elena. No more half-truths. No more running." Her eyes filled with a torment he couldn't decipher. Fear, guilt, and something else buried deeper. She opened her mouth, but footsteps echoed down the alley. Too late. They had been followed. Gideon raised his pistol, his body tensing for the next wave. Elena gripped his sleeve, whispering one final confession before the shadows closed in. "The people hunting me are the same people who once paid me to betray you." The words struck Gideon harder than the bullets tearing into the brick around them. "She betrayed me." For a fraction of a second, the ground beneath him seemed to vanish. But there was no time to process, no time to rage. The footsteps in the alley were closing fast. "Elena," he hissed, keeping his pistol leveled down the dark passage. "You'll explain later. Right now, we survive." 3 men appeared at the far end, their faces half hidden by hoods, their movements precise. Not street thugs, these were professionals. One raised a gun with a silencer. The faint gleam of metal caught the dim light. "Stay behind me," Gideon ordered. He fired, the blast reverberating in the narrow space. The first man staggered, clutching his shoulder. The other two advanced, unfazed. Elena's nails dug into Gideon's arm. "There's a way out, through the old service tunnel." She pointed to a rusted grate halfway down the wall. He fired 2 more shots to keep the attackers at bay, then sprinted with her toward the grate. The iron cover resisted at first, its hinges rusted shut. Gideon slammed his boot against it, once, twice, until the metal shrieked and gave way. "Go!" he barked, shoving Elena through the narrow opening before diving in after her. Bullets sparked against the brick where they had stood seconds before. The tunnel swallowed them in darkness, the damp air thick with mildew. Their footsteps splashed through shallow water as they ran, Gideon's hand gripping hers like a lifeline. Behind them, muffled voices echoed, growing closer. "This way," Elena gasped, pulling him around a corner. Her breathing was ragged, each step fueled by desperation. "I know where it leads." "You planned this," Gideon demanded, his voice low but burning with anger. "You dragged me into this mess, and now you want me to trust you?" Her eyes glistened in the dim light of his phone's flashlight. "I didn't plan any of this. I thought I could control it. I thought I could protect you. But they own everything, Gideon. And if we don't keep moving, they'll erase us both." Before he could reply, a gunshot exploded behind them, the sound amplified in the confined space. The bullet ricocheted, sparks flying. They sprinted harder, the tunnel curving upward until at last, daylight spilled in through another grate. Gideon shoved it open, and they emerged into an abandoned train yard, rusted tracks stretching into the horizon. For the first time since the tower, silence pressed around them, unnerving, fragile. Gideon pulled Elena close, his voice cold, steady. "You're going to tell me everything, Elena. Every lie, every name, every reason you vanished. Because if I'm risking my life again for you," he paused, the weight of betrayal cutting into him. "I need to know if you're worth saving." Her eyes brimmed with tears, her lips trembling with words she couldn't yet speak. But before she could answer, the distant growl of engines shattered the fragile silence. Black SUVs were rolling into the yard, headlights cutting through the mist. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. The train yard reeked of rust and gasoline, the silence broken only by the low rumble of engines closing in. Gideon scanned the shadows, his instincts screaming. They didn't have long. He pulled Elena into the cover of a derelict freight car, his breath harsh against the night air. "Talk. Now. Who are they?" Elena's face was pale in the faint glow of the yard lights, her eyes swimming with panic and guilt. "They're not just criminals, Gideon. They're powerful. Politicians, businessmen, people you thought you could trust. I made a mistake, and now," her voice cracked, "now they'll kill us both for knowing too much." Gideon clenched his jaw. Her words rang with truth, but the sting of betrayal still cut deep. "And your part in this mistake? Tell me you weren't their willing pawn." She flinched, tears threatening to fall. "I was desperate. I didn't see a way out. They promised me protection, money, freedom. But when I realized what they were really after, it was too late." Before Gideon could press further, headlights blazed across the yard. Black SUVs fanned out, doors slamming open as armed men spilled into the shadows. Their formation was tight, rehearsed. A man in a tailored coat stepped forward, his voice carrying through the night. "Gideon Hale," he called, calm and assured. "Walk away. Hand over the girl, and you'll live. This doesn't have to get messy." Gideon felt Elena's trembling hand clutch his arm. Her whisper was sharp, urgent. "Don't trust him. He's the one who—" Gunfire shattered her warning. The air erupted with bullets, sparks dancing as rounds struck metal. Gideon pulled Elena down behind the freight car, returning fire in quick, measured bursts. The men pressed forward, methodical, relentless. "Run when I say," Gideon growled, reloading. Elena shook her head violently. "I'm not leaving you. This isn't a debate," he snapped. But in her eyes, he saw something raw, love tangled with regret, the weight of secrets pressing against her chest. The freight car shuddered as bullets ripped through its steel. Gideon calculated distances, angles, and escape routes. Every option looked suicidal, except one. He grabbed Elena's hand, pulling her toward the far end of the yard. "Trust me this once," he said through gritted teeth. They sprinted under fire, weaving between rusting train cars. Shouts echoed, engines revved, and the hunters closed in. Ahead, Gideon spotted an abandoned locomotive. Its cabin door hung open, black against the silver moonlight. They dove inside, slamming the door shut behind them. Gideon peered through the cracked window, watching armed men fan out like predators circling prey. Breathless, Elena pressed her back to the wall. "They'll never stop," she whispered. "Not until one of us is dead." Gideon raised his pistol, the steel steady in his hand. "Then we make damn sure it isn't us." But even as he spoke, a chilling realization settled in his gut. Someone had told them exactly where to find him, and the only person who could have was standing right beside him. The locomotive's cabin smelled of oil and rust, the stale air thick with dust. Gideon crouched low beneath the cracked window, his pistol steady in his hand, his pulse pounding with the rhythm of encroaching footsteps outside. Elena leaned against the wall, clutching her coat as if it could shield her from everything closing in. The moonlight filtering through the broken glass softened her face, but to Gideon, every detail was edged with doubt. He spoke low, sharp. "How do they find us?" Her head jerked up, eyes wide. "I don't know. I swear, Gideon, I didn't." "Don't lie to me," he snapped, his voice slicing through the cramped space. "Every time I'm one step ahead, they're already waiting. Someone's feeding them my movements. And the only person who's been at my side is you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "If you think I'd lead them to you, after everything, then you don't know me at all." He held her gaze, his chest heaving with a war between instinct and emotion. He wanted to believe her, God, he needed to believe her. But betrayal had already stained her hands once, and now, trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Outside, the crunch of boots drew closer. Voices muttered commands, sharp and coordinated. Gideon risked a glance and spotted flashlights sweeping across the yard. They weren't searching blindly. They were hurting, closing the net. He turned back to Elena, lowering his voice to a dangerous calm. "You've got one chance. Tell me everything. Who's behind this? Who are you really running from?" She pressed her lips together, trembling, then finally whispered, "His name is Victor Draven. He's not just another businessman. He's the one pulling the strings. He controls the money, the politicians, and the police. He owns this city in ways you can't even imagine. And her voice cracked. I work for him." The name hit Gideon like ice water. Draven. He'd crossed paths with whispers of the man before. Corruption, fraud, human lives traded like currency. Always in shadows, never caught. Now the ghost had a face. "And what exactly did you do for him?" Gideon asked, his voice edged like glass. Elena's hands shook as she wiped at her tears. "I was his messenger. I carried information, files, and money. I thought I was nothing more than a pawn until I realized he was using me to get to you. He wanted everything you had uncovered in your investigations. Your files, your sources, your work. I was supposed to earn your trust, distract you, and deliver it all to him." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Gideon's feet. Rage flared hot, but beneath it, an ache sharper than any bullet. "So you were the spy in my life." Her tears fell freely now. "Yes, at first. But then, I fell in love with you, Gideon. That wasn't part of the plan. And when he ordered me to disappear, I couldn't tell you the truth. I thought leaving was the only way to protect you." Outside, a voice barked, "Check the train." Flashlights slashed across the cabin's windows. Elena reached for Gideon's arm, her voice frantic. "Please believe me. I may have been his pawn, but now I'm your only chance at bringing him down." Gideon's finger twitched against the trigger, torn between fury and the memory of nights he once held her close. Outside, footsteps pounded against metal as the enemy climbed aboard. He had seconds to decide whether to trust the woman who had betrayed him or leave her to the wolves and fight alone. The cabin door rattled under a heavy boot. Dust shook from the hinges, and the metallic echo rang in Gideon's chest like a countdown to hell. He met Elena's eyes one last time, his voice low and lethal. "If you've lied to me again, I swear I'll put a bullet in you before I let them take me." Her tear-streaked face didn't flinch. "Then trust me now, because Draven won't stop until you're dead." The door burst inward. 2 armed men stormed inside, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Gideon fired first, 2 sharp shots. One man fell instantly, the other dropped to a knee, weapon clattering. "Elena, move." Gideon shoved her toward the back window, firing again as shadows swarmed outside. Glass shattered, cold night air rushing in. "They're everywhere," she cried, ducking as bullets tore through the walls. Gideon's mind shifted into precision. 3 outside, 2 on the ground, 1 circling left. His instincts sharpened like a blade. He emptied the last rounds from his pistol, then grabbed Elena's hand. "We're jumping." Her eyes widened at the broken window. "That's a 15-foot drop. Better than dying in here." They leapt together, hitting the gravel hard. Gideon rolled, dragging Elena with him as gunfire erupted from the cabin above. Sparks exploded off the rails where bullets struck. "Run," he barked. They sprinted between abandoned train cars, the metallic maze alive with echoes of pursuit. Engines roared as the SUVs repositioned, headlights sweeping across the yard like hunting eyes. Ahead, Gideon spotted an old maintenance shack. Its door hung crooked, but it offered cover. He kicked it open and pulled Elena inside, slamming it shut as their lungs burned from the chase. The shack was dark, littered with rusted tools and the stench of oil. Gideon pressed his back to the wall, reloading with trembling hands. Elena collapsed against a workbench, her breath coming fast, her face pale. "They'll corner us," she whispered. "There's no way out." "There's always a way out," Gideon growled. He peered through a crack in the wood, watching Draven's men fan out across the yard, their radios crackling with orders. He turned back to her, his face hard, voice sharp. "You wanted me to believe you? Prove it. You work for Draven. What does he want right now? Why risk everything to get to us tonight?" Elena swallowed hard, her voice trembling but clear. "Because you're the only one who can expose him. You still have the files from your last investigation, don't you? The ones linking Draven to the offshore accounts. He's terrified you'll use them." Gideon froze. The files, hidden on a secure drive, he hadn't touched in months. If Draven knew, then the ambush wasn't just about Elena. It was about silencing him forever. Before he could reply, the shack's thin walls rattled with the thud of boots outside. A voice barked through a megaphone, cold and commanding. "Gideon Hale, we know you're in there. Come out, or we burn it down with you inside." Elena's fingers clutched his sleeve, her eyes wide with fear. "What do we do?" Gideon slid a knife from the workbench, his mind already racing through possibilities. He glanced at her, his jaw set, voice calm like steel. "We turn the hunters into prey." The shack's walls shook as boots stomped outside. The voice through the megaphone came again, colder this time. "Last chance, Hale. Step out. Hands where we can see them, or you'll burn with her." Gideon's grip tightened around the knife, his other hand steady on the pistol. His voice was a low growl. "They think they've got us cornered. That's when they're weakest." Elena's chest rose and fell in frantic bursts. "Weakest? Gideon, there are a dozen of them out there." He cut her off, his gaze sharp, unyielding. "I don't need to kill them all. I just need to make them bleed and buy us a path." Her lips trembled, but something in his voice steadied her. For the first time since the tower, she nodded without hesitation. "Tell me what to do." A flicker of pride, maybe even trust, crossed Gideon's eyes. He pulled an old oil can from the workbench, shaking it. "Enough fuel to ignite. You're going to distract them. When the fire goes up, we run for that drainage tunnel behind the east tracks. Stay low, keep moving, and don't look back." Before Elena could respond, the shack's window shattered, gunfire tearing through. Wood splintered, sparks leaping. Gideon dropped the oil-soaked rag onto a pile of scrap, flicking the lighter in one swift motion. Flames roared to life, devouring the wood in seconds. Shouts erupted outside. "Fire! They're torching it!" Now! Gideon barked, kicking open the back door. Smoke poured into the night as he dragged Elena through the haze. They sprinted low along the rails, gunfire cracking behind them, the fire masking their movements. A man spotted them and raised his rifle. Gideon didn't hesitate. One clean shot, and the attacker collapsed against the gravel. Another rushed forward. Gideon slammed him with a knife, swift and brutal, before pulling Elena onward. Ahead, the drainage tunnel yawned open, half covered by weeds. Salvation, or a trap. They dove inside, just as floodlights swept over the tracks. Bullets clanged off the tunnel's rim, sparks raining in the dark. The passage swallowed them in damp silence, their ragged breaths echoing off stone. For several moments, only the pounding of their hearts filled the space. Then, faintly, the distant roar of engines pulling away. Draven's men believed the fire had consumed them. Elena collapsed against the tunnel wall, coughing from smoke and fear. Gideon crouched opposite her, pistol still in hand, eyes unblinking. She broke the silence first, her voice hoarse but raw. "You saved me again. After everything I did, why?" Gideon's jaw clenched. He didn't look at her, couldn't. Because if you're telling the truth about Draven, then you're the key to ending him. And if you're lying, he finally met her eyes, his voice like ice. "Then I'd rather kill you myself and hand you back to him." Her tears shimmered in the dim glow of his flashlight. "Then let me prove I'm on your side, Gideon. Just give me the chance." He studied her, torn between memory and mistrust. Somewhere deep inside, the man who had once loved her still fought to breathe. But love, in Gideon's world, was as dangerous as any bullet. From the tunnel's far end, the sound of running water echoed, leading them deeper underground. Gideon rose, extending a hand to pull her up. "Then you'll get your chance," he said, voice grim. "But know this, Elena, trust is earned in blood. And tonight, there'll be plenty spilled." Together, they vanished into the shadows, toward the unknown. The tunnel spat them out into the outskirts of the city, where the night air reeked of rain-soaked concrete and rusted iron. Far above, neon signs flickered over silent warehouses, casting fractured light on the derelict streets. Gideon scanned the shadows, pistol raised, every nerve sharpened to a blade. Elena stumbled beside him, clutching her arm where shrapnel had grazed her. She was exhausted, pale, but the fire in her eyes hadn't dimmed. "Where now?" she whispered, as if the city itself might be listening. "Now." Gideon's voice was a low rasp. "Now we hunt." For weeks, Draven had driven him into corners, turned the hunter into the prey. But Gideon knew something Draven had forgotten. Predators are most lethal when they're wounded. He pulled a small folded map from his jacket, its edges smudged with dirt and blood. He jabbed a finger at a marked location near the waterfront. "Draven's moving something big tonight. Arms shipment, maybe intel. If he's as careful as he thinks, he'll be there himself. That's where we cut the head off." Elena's brow furrowed. "You mean walk straight into his trap?" A grim smile flickered at the corner of Gideon's mouth. "No, I mean turn his trap against him." They slipped through back streets, blending with shadows. Every step carried weight, the silence between them thick with ghosts. At last, Elena broke it. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "Regret what?" Gideon didn't look at her. "Us. What we had before it all burned down." The word struck harder than any bullet. For a moment, the hardened operative inside him faltered. He remembered her laughter in sunlit kitchens, the way her hand once fit perfectly in his. But memory was a double-edged knife, and he could never hold it without bleeding. "Regret," he said finally, "is a luxury I buried with the man I used to be." Elena's lips parted, a protest dying on her tongue. Whatever she wanted to say, she swallowed it, because ahead, the glow of the docks shimmered through the mist. Figures moved in the distance, armed men guarding crates, their rifles glinting beneath floodlights. At the center of it all, a sleek black SUV, doors open like jaws ready to snap shut. Gideon's heart kicked harder. He knew that SUV. He knew the silhouette stepping out of it, even from here. Draven, the man who had destroyed his unit, poisoned his past, and turned Elena into a ghost haunting his every breath. Gideon's grip tightened on the pistol. The moment wasn't just coming. It was here. Elena's hand brushed against his arm, her whisper urgent. If we go down there, Gideon, there's no turning back. His eyes never left Draven. Good, because I'm done running. And with that, Gideon Hale descended into the lion's den, a man with nothing left to lose but the truth and the blood he was about to spill. The waterfront was alive with the hum of engines and the clang of metal on metal. Forklifts groaned under the weight of steel crates, while Draven's men patrolled with mechanical precision, their rifles slung across broad shoulders. Every detail of the operation screamed military efficiency. This wasn't a smuggling job. It was a war machine in motion. Gideon crouched behind a stack of oil drums, scanning the ground. The guards' rotations were tight, their timing exact, but perfection had cracks. He marked them one by one. 10-second gaps at the southwest dock. A blind spot near the generator tower. Weaknesses only a man who lived in shadows could see. Elena knelt beside him, breath shaky but controlled. There are too many, she whispered. Even you can't fight them all. I don't have to, Gideon murmured, eyes cold, calculating. I just need to get a Draven. Cut off the head, the body collapses. Her gaze lingered on him, searching for something beyond vengeance. But Gideon didn't look back. His eyes were locked on the SUV, where Draven stood in crisp black, a predator surveying his kingdom. He was laughing with one of his lieutenants, the kind of laugh that mocked every grave Gideon had ever dug. The sound tore at Gideon's restraint. He pulled a suppressed pistol from his belt, then handed Elena a compact revolver. She hesitated, fingers trembling. I don't. You want to prove you're not with him? Gideon's voice was sharp, leaving no room for argument. Then fight like your life depends on it. Because tonight it does. The weight of the gun steadied her trembling. She nodded once, fear giving way to something harder. They moved. Gideon slipped from cover to cover, a shadow between shadows. At the generator tower, he planted a small charge pulled from his vest. A hum of anticipation thrummed through his chest. This wasn't just an infiltration. It was a message. Draven would know Gideon Hale had come for him. Two guards rounded the corner. Gideon's blade flashed in silence, precise and merciless. Their bodies slumped into the dark without a sound. Elena flinched, but didn't falter, following close. They reached the loading bay, just meters from Draven. Gideon could smell the salt water, the oil, the faint cologne that carried on Draven's tailored suit. So close. So damn close. Then, a sharp click echoed behind them. Gideon froze, turning slowly. A rifle barrel pressed against Elena's back. A guard he hadn't accounted for, eyes wide with the thrill of his catch. Thought you could sneak in, huh? The guard sneered, voice loud enough to draw attention. Elena stiffened, panic flickering in her eyes. Gideon's mind raced. Kill the guard and Draven would see them. Hesitate, and Elena was dead. From the bay, Draven's head turned, his gaze slicing through the dark like a blade. And then his eyes locked with Gideon's. Recognition, hatred, and the kind of smile that promised ruin. The trap had just snapped shut. The dock froze in a heartbeat. Guards turned, weapons raised, as Draven's gaze locked on Gideon from across the floodlit bay. That smile, sharp, cruel, dripping with triumph, cut deeper than any blade. Well, Draven's voice carried easily, smooth as poison. The ghost finally shows himself. The guard behind Elena jabbed his rifle harder into her back. Got him right here, boss. Gideon's pistol didn't waver, eyes never leaving Draven. Let her go. Draven chuckled, stepping down from the SUV with the calm authority of a man who owned the night. His shoes clicked against the steel ramp, echoing like a death toll. You walk into my yard, cut down my men, set my docks on fire, and you expect mercy? His gaze flicked to Elena. She's always been your weakness, Gideon. That's why she belongs to me now. The words lit a fire in Gideon's chest. She'll never belong to you. Then prove it, Draven taunted, spreading his arms wide. Shoot me. Right here. Right now. But you won't, because that would mean losing her twice. For a single agonizing beat, the world narrowed to Gideon's trigger finger. Then, the dock exploded in chaos. The charge Gideon had planted at the generator tower blew, plunging half the waterfront into darkness. Alarms wailed, sparks rained, and shadows swallowed the bay. Gideon moved, faster than thought. He spun, slamming his elbow into the guard holding Elena. The rifle went off, the shot wild, ricocheting into a steel container. Gideon grabbed the man, snapping his neck with a brutal twist, then shoved Elena behind cover. Gunfire erupted. Draven's men opened up in a storm of bullets, sparks dancing off crates and metal. Gideon dove and returned fire, each shot precise, lethal. One man dropped. Another screamed, clutching his leg. Through it all, Draven didn't flinch. He stood in the chaos like a conductor directing an orchestra of violence, barking orders, moving with predatory calm. His eyes never left Gideon. Gideon cut through the guards, a wolf in their midst, his blade flashing whenever the gun ran dry. Blood slicked the dock, bodies fell, but for every man down, another closed in. Elena crawled to a fallen guard, trembling hands wrapping around the revolver Gideon had given her. She lifted it, shaking, then fired, taking down a man who had Gideon in his sights. The sound cracked through the madness. For a heartbeat, Gideon and Elena's eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile but burning. Then Draven stepped forward, pulling a pistol from his coat. He fired, the bullet grazing Gideon's shoulder, spinning him into a crate. Pain seared, but Gideon roared through it, blood soaking his sleeve. Finally, the two men stood face to face, only a few yards apart, the storm of battle raging around them. End of the line, Hale, Draven growled, pistol raised. This time, there's no ghost to save you. Gideon straightened, blood dripping, eyes blazing with fury. You're right, he spat. There's only me. And then, he charged. The night burned with gunfire and smoke, but all of it faded as Gideon charged at Draven. Time narrowed. Every heartbeat a war drum in his chest. Draven's pistol barked twice. One shot grazing Gideon's ribs, the other tearing through his coat, but momentum carried Gideon forward. They collided with a bone-rattling crash, fists swinging, weapons clattering to the dock. Draven slammed Gideon against a steel crate, driving his knee into Gideon's stomach. Pain exploded, but Gideon answered with a headbutt that split Draven's lip. The two men fought like predators locked in a cage. Gideon's strikes were fueled by years of betrayal and rage. Draven's counters came with cold, ruthless precision. Flesh met steel, blood spattered the wood, every blow an echo of ghosts long buried. Still clinging to the past, Draven sneered, catching Gideon's arm and twisting. She betrayed you once. She'll do it again. You're fighting for a ghost. Gideon roared, breaking free, his fist shattering Draven's nose. Then I'll bury that ghost with you. Behind them, Elena cried out. She had the revolver raised, both hands trembling, caught between the two men, tearing each other apart. Her eyes darted wildly, between Draven's bloodied sneer and Gideon's blazing fury. Stop, she screamed. One of you will die. Please, don't make me choose. Neither man stopped. Draven lunged, dragging Gideon toward the water's edge. They grappled, boots scraping on slick wood, until Draven pulled a knife from his belt. The blade flashed in the floodlight, aimed straight for Gideon's chest. In that heartbeat, Elena acted. She fired. The revolver's cracks split the night, echoing across the docks. Draven's eyes widened, shock flickering before rage consumed them. Blood bloomed across his side. His grip faltered just long enough for Gideon to twist the knife from his hand. With a final, guttural roar, Gideon drove Draven back. One strike, then another, until the man staggered at the dock's edge. For a moment, Draven teetered, snarling through blood and broken teeth. You think killing me will save you? He spat, voice raw. You'll never outrun what you are. You'll become me. Gideon's eyes were steel, unblinking. No, I'll end you. He shoved Draven hard. The warlord toppled backward, crashing into the black water below. His scream was swallowed by the waves, leaving only silence and ripples where he vanished. The fight was over. Gideon stood trembling, bloodied and hollow-eyed, staring at the dark water as if expecting Draven to rise again. Elena lowered the revolver, tears streaking her smoke-stained face. Slowly, she stepped toward him. "It's done," she whispered, voice breaking. "It's finally over." But Gideon didn't answer right away. His hand shook, not from weakness, but from the weight of victory. He had ended Draven, but the ghosts he carried weren't so easily drowned. At last, he looked at Elena. Pain, betrayal, and something softer flickered in his eyes. "You saved me," he admitted, voice low, almost unwilling. Her hand brushed his arm, tentative. "No, Gideon. We saved each other." For the first time in years, he let the wall inside him crack just slightly. The night air filled his lungs, heavy with blood and salt, but also with something he hadn't felt in so long: release. Sirens wailed in the distance. Soon the authorities would swarm the docks. Draven's empire would crumble without its master. Gideon turned, guiding Elena toward the shadows. "This isn't the end," he said, voice steadier now, carrying both warning and hope. "It's just the beginning of something we don't yet understand." She nodded, walking beside him into the night. Behind them, the dark water rippled once more, silent, subtle, as if swallowing a secret. Whether Draven's body sank to the depths or lingered beneath, no one could say. The war was won, but the shadow of the man they had slain would haunt them both for as long as they lived.